Disco Donny, probably the most famous character in Tom's Adventure. As much as I'd like to say Tom's is the most popular character, Disco Donny is, which is fine. He's one of my favorites. I had a lot of inspiration for this character, but I guess no one's made this connection yet, and I'm actually pretty happy. But I thought Disco Donny was a pretty original idea at the time, and I was so happy. I thought, oh my god, this is great. I mean, I outdid myself here, and then I realized after I made the character that there's another character who's just like Disco Donny, and this character is Disco Stew. When I saw an episode of The Simpsons, I remembered him, and I almost wanted to cry, because I thought, oh my god, people are going to think Donnie's a ripoff of Stu, even though he's not. Now, I'm grateful that people haven't tried to come and tell me that I suck because I ripped off Disco Stew and Disco Donny sucks and everything like that, because really, I didn't even think of it at the time. Disco Stew, sure, he shouts out his Disco Stew name. Disco Donny, he does the same thing, Disco Donny, but really the two characters are very different. And one, Disco Stew says something catchy after everything he says. Disco Donny just says Disco Donny, he says, before everything. Sometimes he doesn't. Another thing is, if anyone's ever seen the episode of The Simpsons where Disco Stew reveals that he hates disco with a burning passion, and Disco Donny actually loves disco. That's one of the pleasures he gets in life. He's been doing it since the 70s. And Donny, like I said, loves disco. And also their characters are a lot different. Donny is the disco man. Disco Stew's more of the wannabe disco man. I mean, I like Disco Stew, but I'm just saying that Disco Donny, he really is that disco man that Disco Stew claims to be. But Disco Donny used to be a senator. If you watched, I believe it was episode 8 or 9, I can't remember. But I really tried to develop Disco Donny in Tom's Adventure. You know, Tommy Town, Disco Man, Thomas Raro, anything that you see Disco Donny in, he's not developed at all. He's just that disco man. And even though Disco Donny is developed in Tom's Adventure, is the guy who's a senator, isn't exactly a disco, that's all he thinks about. He does love disco. I mean, just like Superman has his flaws, but he still is a good person. He's Superman. And Disco Donny, I mean, I'm glad that people like Disco Donny. I want to say thank you to everyone who hasn't called him a total ripoff of Disco Stew, because he's not. And I never tried to make him a ripoff of Disco Stew. I never did. Disco Stew and Disco Donny are completely different. I apologize to anyone who thinks differently of that.